The other story here is that there's little acknowledgement within the review released today of how corruption in the Afghan government continues to undermine U.S. efforts, which raises the question of exactly what are we fighting for in that country? Are U.S. troops dying to prop up a corrupt Karzai government? The American people think so, according to a new ABC News Washington Post poll that shows disapproval of the war is at an all-time high, 60%. So President Obama's war report, whitewashing the truth in Afghanistan and ignoring the wishes of the majority of the country, seems to be the way it's going. Many of the critics of this war agree. With us now from California to offer more insight on the war report and the direction our nation is headed with a prolonged conflict in Afghanistan is Robert Greenwald, activist, filmmaker, founder of Brave New Films and RethinkAfghanistan.org and .com. Robert, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Tom.
Great to have you with us. The review that the Pentagon provided to the White House last night and distributed to the world, I understand that there are no specifics in this review?
Yes, it's kind of sad, Tom, or in terms of the report, and of course it's tragic in terms of the policy. But you look at this report, it talks about changing momentum. There's not one fact, one statistic, or one piece of proof that in fact momentum is being changed. And of course there's all kinds of data out there that shows the contrary. Casualties up, attacks up, loss of lives up. The American Red Cross, who came out with the strongest statement today, saying that the war is worse for their people that they're trying to protect than at any time in the previous 9 years.
So how much are we spending in Afghanistan?
Well, we're spending, depending on who you talk to, $120 or $130 billion a year. Well, it's hard to wrap our mind around that, but just think about one day, Tom, over $300 million. What would you do? What would anybody do if they had $300 million to spend? And they could do it in a way that would truly make us safer, not going in and occupying a foreign country, but ways that affect our lives and our ability to survive, whether it's firemen, whether it's policemen, whether it's hospitals, whether it's jobs. Those are truly issues of national security. Going into a country where, by the administration's own admission, there are less than 100 al-Qaeda, does that justify the expense and the hundreds of thousands of Americans who are over there?
Robert Greenwald, if the CIA is asserting that there are, I think at the time of 9/11, the argument was made that there were 20,000 al-Qaeda. Let's say that there are still thousands around the world. There are fewer than 100 in Afghanistan, and our goal, our military goal, is to take out al-Qaeda. Are we supposed to start bombing Pakistan and Yemen next? I mean, it seems that the logic of this is, frankly and ultimately, insane.
It is, Tom, and you know, you've talked about that for a while. And if you look at the history of the disastrous wars, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, the logic never made sense. And the logic here is exactly there. If there are less than 100 al-Qaeda, and we're going after al-Qaeda, what are we doing occupying that country? And as the president and all the advisors today, they completely intermix the Taliban and al-Qaeda. They are different. They're different organizations, they're different agendas, and the notion that we're going in to invade and occupy when there are less than 100 al-Qaeda just doesn't make sense, and Americans do not believe they're safer.
Right after 9/11, the Washington Post reported that the Taliban, the leaders of the Taliban, Mullah Omar, had said to George W. Bush through the State Department, had made the offer that if the White House would present any evidence that Osama bin Laden was somehow involved in 9/11, that they would arrest him and they would turn him over to a third-party country. We've since learned through various leaks and FOIA filings and other things that Bill Clinton had been negotiating with the Taliban for them to arrest Osama bin Laden, and was actually fairly close to that, and tried to hand that off to George W. Bush, who basically ignored it for 9 months. To what extent, well, actually, why is that part of the narrative so completely absent, that there was really no need for this war in the first place, even if the goal of the war was to get bin Laden?
Well, I think it's this notion of what we do as a country, tragically, which is rage and revenge. It almost doesn't matter who the target is. We're hurting, we're grieved, we're pained around 9/11. Let's go attack somebody. And that's something that we as progressives and thinkers really need to confront, and we really need to be loud and clear. These wars are failing, they're costing us lives and money, and they are not making us any safer.
You know, what's so bizarre is that in '52, Eisenhower ran on a campaign of vote for Eisenhower, vote for peace. That's literally what his TV ads say. He was going to end the Korean War. The Republicans, you know, my dad's generation, my dad was a Republican, he would talk about those Democrat wars, World War I and World War II, you know, that the Democrats are the war. And it seems that Obama is captive to this Republican meme that has been spread over the last couple of decades that the Democrats are weak on wars, and therefore he's afraid to stop this thing.
Well, we are seeing evidence of that, and we're seeing evidence of the fact that there's not a strong enough movement that opposes the war. I do believe we have a unique opportunity now, Tom, which is because the country is in such desperate economic shape, the more we can talk about the cost of this war, which people know is not making them safer, the more we really have a chance to impact this discussion on this war and, tragically, the future wars to come.
Great. Indeed, absolutely. Thank you, Robert Greenwald, Brave New Films and rethinkafghanistan.com. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tom.
As Robert points out through his work at Brave New Films and rethinkafghanistan.com, the war in Afghanistan is deteriorating. President Obama can point to individual targets that show improvement, but the truth is 2010 was the bloodiest on record for the United States, and that's after more than 9 years of sustained combat in that country. Listen to the American people, Mr. President, and listen to the final words of your chief diplomat, Richard Holbrooke. Stop this war.